Team Penske is exactly who we thought they were, even if there was some doubts. While one Toyota team is fighting internally, while another is just fighting to survive in the playoffs. Welcome back to the Breaking Bob channel. I hope y'all are doing well on this Sunday night. Earlier race, a 2 p.m. local start out in the Northeast up in New Hampshire. Gotta say, I did like that. It was a nice change of pace there instead of the later starts there. A lot of people were kind of skeptical of New Hampshire being added into the playoffs, but I like what I saw today overall from the Magic Mile. But we'll get into it all. Of course, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. NASCAR content daily on the Breaking Bob channel as we get closer and closer to crowning a champion here in Phoenix in just a few weeks. But it's the round of 12, the first race in the round of 12 up in New Hampshire, the Magic Mile, the first time in the playoffs for a few years. Of course, way back when out in the early chase, this was a playoff race as well. Like I said, some people were skeptical, but a really good race that saw Team Penske just dominate the flat, shorter track there. And a lot of people were kind of skeptical after that first round. Maybe Penske had lost a step. Would they really be able to even get to Phoenix, where, of course, they've been dominant in that championship race for the next gen era? Yeah, folks, it looks like they haven't lost that step that a lot feared they may have. It was pretty much a Penske show all day. Ryan Blaney, your winner today, he led 116 laps, but Penske stole the show, leading 273 of the 301 laps. And I do count Josh Berry in that with the Wood brothers. It's basically a Penske fourth car. Young Ryan Blaney, YRB, got the win today, locking himself into the round of 8. And it was really just his race to lose once he got clear of Josh Berry on that final restart. Of course, he did have better tires, 2 fresh tires compared to Berry, who stayed out. But Berry stayed with him. But it was Ryan Blaney who had that clean air and was able to make it work. Blaney, who was the fastest car in practice yesterday over long run speed, not a total shock, although it was him and Joe Logano for the most part through the first part of the race. Logano kind of got shuffled back with the pit stop there on that final restart. But it was really just a Penske dominant race today, really flexing their muscles. Josh Berry, the Wood brothers, was basically the third car up in Penske's. Austin Cindric, not really in that top 10, was nowhere really to be found, where his teammates, Ryan Blaney, Josh Berry, and Joe Logano just leading lap after lap, 273 of that 301, like I said. So for Ryan Blaney, already locked into the round of 8, he's definitely been the one carrying the Penske water this year. But Joe Logano was no slouch for his own qualifying on the pole and showing the field that it may not be that even year, but Joe Logano is definitely a championship contender at this rate still. I'll talk about Josh Berry here in just a little bit, but he was right there on Ryan Blaney's tails at the very end. But Ryan Blaney, once he got clear and got that clean air in those last, I think it was 37 laps of the race he led, it was really just hard to pass once you got the lead. It was hard to get runs on the inside there. You had to really use up your right side of the tires there. But for Ryan Blaney, keeping that momentum, as it seems like Penske just turns it on through the rest of the year. This is starting to be where they really get into that crunch time and they really separate themselves, it feels like, from the rest of the teams. And that really is true, because New Hampshire normally in the next gen era especially has been a Toyota just playing ground, but not today. Again, Penske showing the muscle that Toyota normally does. Christopher Bell, especially, a guy who has won most of the races in the next gen era. In the Xfinity race, he's dominant this track. 6th place finish, not a single lap led, and started 19th, slowly got his way back up into the field, was the fastest car on 4 fresh tires at the end, but just a non-factor from somebody that we genuinely expect would be one of those cars up in the front toward the end. No, and none of the Toyotas really were up there today. I mean, Denny Hamlin, not up there quite the same speed. Chase Briscoe, a non-factor. The 2311 cars, normally last year, they were really good at this track. Not today. Let's start with Joe Gibbs Racing before we talk about 2311, because Joe Gibbs Racing, definitely the story of the day, is Denny Hamlin trying to get around teammate Ty Gibbs in stage 2. Gibbs was holding him up. Hamlin frustrated on the radio. What's this guy's deal? There was some words exchanged. And then Hamlin gets into him right as the broadcast has the camera on both their in-car camera and the battle. And Hamlin just gets into him. Ty Gibbs, of course, crashing out, hits the wall. Ended up coming back, broke a toe link later. It completely ruined the 54's day. And Ty Gibbs was very frustrated. He even said, it's game on. Post-race, didn't really want to comment on it, but I would love to be a fly on the wall in that JGR competition meeting. Denny Hamlin said, are they not going to talk to this kid? Are they afraid to talk to this kid? Of course, Ty Gibbs, the grandson of the owner, Joe Gibbs Racing. It's going to be fascinating to see how it is handled. Denny Hamlin is in the playoffs where Ty Gibbs is a non-playoff driver. And there's always this question of how do you race these playoff drivers if you're a non-playoff driver? I want to see everyone get raced the same. But when you're a teammate especially, you have to have some sort of sense of the moment there. And for Denny Hamlin, who was probably the faster car, for Ty Gibbs, you have every right to block him. But when something like that happens, it's not going to do the team any favors. And you almost took out Christopher Bell if you're Denny Hamlin there as well. Nobody wins in this situation because now you've got drama on the team internally. Everyone's going to be asking questions. And I'm not saying that Ty Gibbs has complete total authority over Joe Gibbs Racing, but you have seen him completely ice out Corey Heim in the Toyota pipeline from ever racing in the Joe Gibbs Racing cars, whether Xfinity or Cup. You have Denny Hamlin, who's got his own team now with 2311. Of course, he's got a long-time partnership with Joe Gibbs Racing. But Ty Gibbs is always going to be the one that gets picked and preferred on the team. So a fascinating development to see what comes of this Denny Hamlin Ty Gibbs rift, or if it's just guys in the heat of the competition exchanging words. But I'm really interested to see what happens here. So we've talked about the good with Penske, the bad with Joe Gibbs Racing. Let's talk about the ugly, and because it may not be quite the internal drama, but 2311 Racing. Now, Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick last year at New Hampshire, really, really good runs, but this year, the speed was not there. They were never really in the top 10. Bubba Wallace finished 26th, Tyler Reddick 21st. And now they find themselves already minus 20 or above down in the cut line. They're already the two cars furthest out of the elimination zone with 2 races left with Kansas and then the Roval. The Roval, of course, Tyler Reddick had to sweat last year with incidents with Denny Hamlin and then just that stage 3, put new tires on him, climbed his way through. But Bubba Wallace, after all the great momentum, this week was just a big, just screeching halt for the momentum for the 23 team. And they've got Kansas next week, which historically has been a great track for 2311, but the last few races has not been. So will they be able to replicate that formula early on in the next gen car? Will it be more of the same from the last few Kansas races? But for 2311 now, they find themselves in a massive hole. Already one race in at New Hampshire at a track that we thought they would probably be pretty good at. At least I did. I thought most of the Toyotas would come away at New Hampshire in a good position. Instead, this was a race that both Toyota teams really are going to be, all 3 Toyota teams, I guess. You got Legacy, John Hunter, Nemechek hitting the wall there late. Just not a good day overall for Toyota Gazoo Racing. Before we talk about the playoff standings and focus on that, because everyone always has to, I'm guilty of it as well, do want to shine some light on some non-playoff drivers, some guys who got eliminated last week, actually. Josh Berry never even had a chance in the playoffs in those first 3 races, with issue after issue, none really his fault. A good race today, finishing second, closed on Ryan Blaney late. They, of course, when that caution came out, Cody Ware's second caution, they don't even get me started on the Cody Ware and Austin Dillon incident. But when that incident came out, Josh Berry kind of was stuck having to stay out there, didn't want to use his last set of tires with 41 laps to go, 45 laps to go, whatever it was there. But a great run nonetheless for Berry, who got spun early on by Shane Van Gisbergen, another guy who got eliminated last week. Both guys running inside the top 10. Berry was able to rebound. Really credit to him. Got the track position back and was able to hold it, contender for the win late. But SVG, want to give a shout out to Shane Van Gisbergen, running inside the top 10 for the entire part of stage 1. Everyone wants to say, oh, well, he's just this road course merchant, but this was a great example this week of SVG getting better on these ovals. At New Hampshire, especially, a track that definitely not necessarily one you would think he would learn quickly at, but really a testament to the skill after just 1 year in this next-gen car full-time. He's getting better. He did spin Josh Berry, though. Berry was able to get back, but SVG, I guess karma came back around because on one of those restarts then, Brad Keselowski stuck his nose just a little bit too far in on turn 2 and got into SVG, spinning him as Keselowski bounced off the inside wall, took out SVG, who got ARCA braked by Kyle Busch. Daniel Suarez was involved in a multitude of cars. It was just an incident all around. But just wanted to give them a shout out because just after last week with both of them getting eliminated, a great bounce back for both of those drivers. And Carson Hosfar, once again, consistently finding himself in the top 5, top 10. One of these weeks, he's going to be a contender for potentially stealing a playoff race win. He's going to have that race win come sooner rather than later. The speed is there. Spire Motorsports overall, Justin Haley, of course, once again, not up there, but Michael McDowell and Carson Hocevar running inside the top 10, top 15 consistently today. A good day for Spire Motorsports overall. But of course, with one race down in the round of 12, we've got Kansas next week in the round of 12. We do have to look at the playoff standings because Ryan Blaney's already locked himself into the round of 8, the next round. A couple of guys have themselves in a little bit better position, especially with some good runs today. You think of Joe Logano, Chase Elliott maximizing their points, and some guys probably a little bit just not quite what they thought they would be. William Byron plus 47, Larson plus 41, Christopher Bell plus 29, Hamlin 27, Logano plus 24. They're all feeling pretty good, and even Chase Elliott plus 14 did as good as he could given the circumstances. Chase Briscoe a little bit sweaty at plus 12. And then the guys that are right now in the danger zone. At this point, they would be eliminated. Ross Chastain needs 12 points. Austin Cindric minus 19. Tyler Reddick minus 23. And Bubba Wallace 27. 23-11 in danger already after one race in the round of 12. But with Kansas next week, a traditional oval, we'll see what happens. Of course, a lot of content, I'm sure, will come through the week. I'll probably have a video on the Legacy Motor Club and Rick War Racing settlement. I wanted to see kind of how that turned out this weekend. It wasn't sure who's going to have that charter next year before I did the video on it, but I'm sure we'll have some clarity as this weekend kind of gets behind us here. But you'll probably see some content after that with that being settled. But as always, make sure to like this video if you like what you saw. Subscribe to the Breaking Bob channel for more NASCAR content. It helps me out a ton. And I'll see you leading up to Kansas next week as the round of 12. It didn't disappoint from New Hampshire today. I got to say, I like the racing overall from the Magic Mile. But we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more.